on, everyone? Back with another episode of Stuff and Things, and today we're talking about how to get drone looking shots without actually using a drone. I've noticed in some of my previous videos, especially my skiing videos where I was using these types of clips a lot, some people were like, hey man, how are you getting a drone to follow you through those tight trees, and how is the clarity so good to just follow you around and make things look so awesome? Now, it's not really a big secret or surprise because I did cover this in a video in the past of this camera right here. This is coming from Insta360, and this is their model 1R. Now, I gave some of my brief impressions in that video, and I actually showed you guys how to edit 360 footage. So if you want to check that out, I'd recommend watching that before we get into this video because there's a lot of good information over there. I've been using this camera since that video, and it has honestly completely changed the way that I look at action cameras. When I think of action cameras, I think of something that's rugged and really durable, has a pretty good battery life, and allows you to capture different types of content without really getting in your way. Now, before I had the chance to test out the Insta360 One R, action cameras were not my favorite. They were definitely getting in my way of filming things, whether it was something helmet mounted, chest mounted, or if I'm just holding it in my mouth sometimes. It's great for getting shots when you don't want to carry around a full-blown camera like this right here, which I've done in the past, and it's fine, it works, you get really good shots and good audio and everything. But there are a lot of cases where I don't want to carry that, and I just want to enjoy myself in the moment, whether I'm mountain biking, skiing, hiking, or whatever it may be, and I don't want to have the nuisance of carrying a big camera like that. Now, some of the older action cameras that I was carrying got in the way because they're just really finicky. Either the batteries would die really quickly, or I'd have to set up a shot like on a chin-mounted helmet camera type of deal, and then I'd have to open an app on my phone that never connects right the first time, and I'm constantly like moving things around, and it just didn't really make my life easy. And I believe an action camera should absolutely be really easy to use. So once I started testing this thing out, again, it completely changed my perspective of action cameras. This thing has been super reliable. The battery life on it has been great. The app is awesome. It packs so much functionality into a tiny little package like this that's easy to carry around, and I'm really never going to do an activity without a camera like this because it's so pocketable and just easy to bring with me everywhere. Now, the icing on the cake for a camera like this is that it's completely 360, so you're not going to miss any shots. As long as you know how to edit a little bit in post, which I did show you guys in the previous video, all I have to do is sort of hold this thing out and I'm capturing my entire environment in 360. The editing allows me to change things to make it a little bit more linear and look like a camera like this, or allows me to open up that field of view to be a little bit more fisheye or a complete 360 type of coverage. If I'm in the middle of the woods, I just hold this thing out and I can capture everything in my entire environment, and it looks like I'm standing on a tiny little planet. So this thing has been great, but the 1R is not what we're talking about today. We're talking about a different camera from Insta360, which I've actually been using in place of this for a little while, just to test it out. And that happens to be the Insta360 One X2. Now, just like the Insta360 One R, the One X2 packs so many features in a tiny little package, and it's pocketable, so you're really never going to go on an adventure without it. The main thing is that you're able to capture 360-degree footage in 5.7K, which means you just hit record, shoot whatever your environment happens to be, and then you can reframe everything later, so you're never really going to miss a shot. Everything is packed into a tiny little durable body that's about the size of a small candy bar, and it fits in the palm of your hand super nicely. It of course has an incredible Steadicam mode, which is probably more stable than other action cameras that I've tested in the past. And a lot of that has to do with the technology and software that comes along with the Insta360 camera packages. What they call their flow state stabilization is insane, and we're definitely going to be testing that out here in a little bit. On one side of the camera, you'll find an ultra bright touchscreen, which is actually circular, very different from a lot of other action cameras out there. And I was skeptical about this at first, but I will actually show you some cool features of that later. You have a removable battery door, and the battery life on this thing has been great. I've been using it for the past couple of weeks, and I only needed to charge it a handful of times. Inside the battery compartment, you'll find a slot for a micro SD card, and then just above that, a USB-C port for recharging the battery. There are only two buttons on the camera, a power button on the side, and then a stop and start record button just below the touchscreen. This thing is waterproof up to 10 meters, and I've gotten it a little bit wet while skiing, but other than that, I haven't actually gone swimming with it or anything yet. It of course has dual lenses, which are fixed, unlike the One R, and there are pros and cons to that. And then there's not one or two, or even three, but 4 microphones giving you 360 audio for your 360 footage. Now, speaking of the dual lenses on the One X2, these things are fixed on here and you cannot remove them like you can on the One R. Right off the bat, some of the pros and cons of cameras like this in general is that they're obviously bulbous. It's capturing 360-degree footage, so they stick out a little bit. Now, I'm pretty rough on cameras, and I should have been a little bit more careful because in a skiing video a while back, I actually lost my silicone lens cover for the One R. The One X2 does come with a silicone cap, and I'm going to try to keep this thing with me at all times. It also comes with a little kind of soft sleeve, and you can also put the camera in there, that way you are dually protected. Now, it's obviously a pro to have lenses like this because you're capturing 360 footage. However, one of the downsides is that if you lose those caps, then chances are you might nick up your lens a little bit. I made the mistake of setting this down on a tile floor before, and as soon as I picked it up, I accidentally scratched one of the lenses of the One R. Now, luckily I did that with this camera and not the new one, because if you watched my video on this in the past, you will know that this thing is completely modular, and I can actually pull the lenses off of the actual brains of the unit and completely replace this lens here. So I don't need to buy an entirely new camera, and that is a huge selling feature of this camera. Now, like I mentioned, I definitely don't want to do that with the One X2 because these are all fixed on here, but it is a really nice small package. So I'll just make sure I hold on to this little silicone cap here. Now, the way this camera works is pretty straightforward. Like I mentioned, there's only 2 buttons, so press and hold the power button. And that thing fires up. You get the little port window here so you can see all of your surroundings. And then you simply press the record button to record. It does take a little bit to record, but there we go, now we're rolling. And simply press it again. It will process video from both cameras on there, and it stops recording. Now, what's cool about this little port window is you can drag around and see your entire environment. If I tap on the screen, it allows me to quick change all of my settings in here. Recording modes, we have 5.7K up to 30 frames per second. We have 4K, 30, and 50 frames per second. And then 3K at 100 frames per second for some really nice slow-mo shots. If you're currently using the rear lens, you can tap this button and it will flip it around to the front. That way you can see yourself. And then if you don't want to shoot in 360, you can tap that and it puts it in more of a normal linear style mode. Now I'm filming with just the front-facing camera, tap it again, and I'm filming with the rear-facing camera. If I swipe down, it gives me access to a quick menu. I can change the brightness, I can lock it, change the sounds. I can actually turn on voice control, which I have not used yet, and you can also dig further into the settings for Bluetooth and screen auto sleep. You can format your SD card. Just do a lot of really cool things right here on the actual unit. Now, this is especially nice to have on cameras that don't have a good app to go along with it. However, the Insta360 app is phenomenal for an action camera. There's so many cool things that you can do with it, and it's just like the icing on the cake for a camera like this. If I swipe to the right, that gives me access to different exposure settings. You can change your aperture settings, or you can run all this stuff in auto. I typically just run all this stuff in auto because it's kind of a pain to mess with all these settings on the go. But it is also nice that it gives you the flexibility to sort of fine-tune your shots however you want. Now, I've been using the newer X2 for a little while now, but I haven't really dove into all of the cool after effects that you can sort of put on the footage after you capture it. Their app is packed with so many different features which allow you to do things like make this look like a drone shot, and you can do dolly pulls, and you can pause and stop recording 2 different clips to sort of reposition the camera, and then it stitches them together, which sounds like a lot, but if I have a good understanding of the software, I think it might actually be pretty easy to use. So what I'm gonna do is go out on the town and just do some mundane activities, just sort of walk around, maybe go get some food. And I'm going to try to test out the different modes that the Insta360 app allows you to sort of implement into the 360 footage, and we'll see what we come up with. Alright guys, we just got back from a little electric skateboard ride, and you will see that video sometime on the channel here in the future. All of those shots were filmed with the camera mounted to a little monopod right here. This is also coming from Insta360. Just like the previous video when I was talking about the One R, what's cool about the software is that it actually gets rid of this stick, selfie stick or whatever you want to call it. And that's just the first step in allowing these cameras to sort of look like drone footage. Now I'm just hand holding the camera, and we're going to talk about some of the pros and cons. The pro is that it's super lightweight and durable and all of that, but one of the cons would be that the audio is typically not the greatest. Right now I'm standing outside, so the audio should be pretty decent. The lighting here is very bright, but if I'm moving at all, like during those skateboarding clips, any kind of wind noise sort of blows out any audio that you are capturing, which is not the greatest. Now for another pro, I should be able to hold the camera out like this and literally rotate it. And there the camera just did a complete 360, and that's what they call their horizon leveling. So no matter how I'm holding this camera, I can hold it horizontally or vertically now, and it's always going to keep that same horizon behind me. So pretty cool features on this little camera, but now let's talk more about how you get drone looking shots with a tiny little camera like this. I just found a mode recently in the app which allows you to basically turn this thing into an FPV or a first person view drone. The camera is obviously not flying, it's all done with software and editing. However, I'm going to open up this app and take a few shots around my friend's house here, and we will see if we can make this camera sort of feel like an FPV drone. Alright guys, I'm back from a little skateboard adventure and testing out that new FPV drone style shot that you can get with the Insta360. I imported all the footage and I edited everything that you saw so far, like the skateboarding clips, as I normally would, and if you want more info on that, you can check out the previous video. I haven't found a good way to edit the FPV style shots other than the application, so I'm going to try to turn on screen recording here on my phone and sort of give you guys a rundown of how this works. So here in the Insta360 app, if I press the bottom button there, that will take us into a preview. So now this is seeing what the camera is seeing. I currently have the little lens cover on here, but if I click down in the left-hand corner here, that will take you to some things that you've already shot. Now I have a few different shots here of testing out the drone footage, and I think I'm basically just going to let the software do its thing and then export whatever shots I have. So I'm going to cycle through here until I find the first drone shot. Okay, right here is the first one. I'm not going to do any editing here, I'm just going to click to watch. Down in the red there you will see that that is the first shot, and I'm going to explain how this works too. So right here I'm sticking the camera through into the window of my van, just paused it. While you're recording, you actually hit pause on the app and then you move to the other side of where you want the camera to be positioned. So for this shot, I'm sticking the camera through the window of my van, hitting stop on the app, going to the other window, sticking it through the opposite way, hitting resume, and then pulling the camera out through the other window. So if I hit play here, playback is not going to be great on the app, but hopefully once it's all analyzed, it will be a little bit smoother. So I'll hit play. It does a 360, that way I'm not in the shot, and then it sort of looks like an FPV drone that flew through the van. Here we go again, continuing on. I'm going to fly the camera through my ladder in the van, which is a tiny little gap. I don't know if that one captured it the way I thought it would, but could be just because the gap is so tiny. So I'm going to pause that. Up in the right hand corner, I'm just going to hit export. I'm assuming this is going to export it directly to my phone, and then I'm going to do this with all of the drone shots, put them onto my computer, throw them in this video that you're watching right now, and once I see what the camera and software has done, I'll let you know my thoughts on it. Alright guys, here we are. All of the footage is now processed on the phone. I transferred it over to my computer. I'm in Final Cut now, and I'm gonna take a look at this and give you my feedback real time. So the first thing I'm noticing already is that the quality is not the greatest. Typically you're filming in 5.7K, at least that's what I'm filming in, and when I put those just raw files onto my computer, it obviously gives you a little bit better resolution. I may be able to change the resolution on the phone, that way when I'm exporting it from my phone, it could be a little bit better quality, but that's sort of besides the point right now. As I click play on this clip, looks pretty stable as expected. Here we go, going in through the van window. Transition wasn't too terrible for the first time trying that. I'm gonna play it a little bit slower now. Okay, so it looks like the software is actually using sort of a blur transition to sort of seamlessly put things together, and it's not too bad. The shot going between the ladder, not the greatest, but that's just because it was such a small space. Now the next shot here, I walked in through my friend's house and I put the camera out through the dog door. Let's see how this one turned out. Not too bad for going from a bright environment into a darker environment and then back to a really bright environment. The camera compensated for that pretty well and the transition was usable. I'm definitely gonna have to play around with this a little bit more until I get comfortable with it and I start getting shots that I'm actually going to end up using in videos. The next one I just sort of floated all over the house and stuck the camera through little gaps wherever I could find one. So we're starting here around a pole. That one was really good. Okay, so that transition was a lot better because the lighting was consistent. That one's a little more realistic because a drone could actually fly through there. I think when you're going through really tiny gaps, it becomes a little less realistic. I'm gonna continue on. Through a chair, again, that gap was a little bit too small. Now underneath the table, getting dark again here. Tiny gap, I just like bumped the camera off the chair. It's okay, I guess. Underneath a little coffee table. Transition was okay. And then the last one, I just wanted to see if we could do the transition through a glass window, a glass door. Again, super bright and blown out, but that transition could work in some scenarios, I guess. So that's just one mode with a camera like this that you can play around with. There are a lot more, and I definitely need some more time to dive into some of those features in their editing software. From my perspective right now, getting drone shots with this thing all the way extended, just sort of out of view, making it look like you're not holding a camera, I would say that's the best way to do it. And then when you're messing with that FPV setting, I think it would be much better suited outside where you have consistent lighting, or even inside if you have consistent lighting indoors. Going inside and outside like you saw here was definitely not the best way to test this. I'm only finding that out now as I'm looking over this footage. But again, this is just sort of scratching the surface of the features that the One X has in it, and the software is really cool. I'm looking forward to using 360 cameras like this more in my footage here on the channel from here on out. So I think that's where I'm going to end today until I get some more use with this camera and the other one as well. Insta360 is actually running a spring sale right now, so if you guys are interested in these cameras, I will leave some links in the description down below, and you can also check out the first comment for more links to both the X2 and the One R. If you guys have any questions on editing or anything around these 360 cameras, I will try to answer anything as best as possible. And like I said, I'm still learning with these things, so once I get using these to their full potential, I think we're gonna get some really cool footage for future projects here on the channel. That's all for today. If you are new here, consider clicking subscribe. I make new videos every single week. As always, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you in the next one.